Fire doesn't always destroy us. Sometimes it transforms us. Welcome to Thriving After the Fire, where real survivors share real stories of resilience, healing, and rising from the ashes. Hey, Cae, thank you so much for joining us today. You and I have been working on a lot of legislation together for domestic violence, sexual assault, domestic violence, any kind of victims. I really appreciate you taking the time out to tell your story and help us understand why you fight so hard for victims' rights. You and I are working together with a team of legislators, Representative Carolyn Brown, and some advocates and some victims. And we are working to try to create Victims' Rights Amendment, which would change the Constitution of Arkansas. And so thank you so much for joining me. And I know you're going to tell us a little bit about your story and why you're fighting so hard for these rights.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So tell us a little bit, give us a little bit of background on how you got into this field and why you're so passionate about helping other victims.
As you know, I wrote Redbird Phoenix book, and it tells my story. I was born in Kingston, Arkansas, Madison County, and I was born into a family who incest was common, and it was normal to them. And I grew up in that family being abused by my dad, mother, brother, and 3 uncles.
Dad, mother, brother, and 3 uncles. One of the things that's very interesting to me that I learned about you was your mom was also sexually abusing you. And I have never personally heard of a woman being the perpetrator in that type of crime.
Matriarch rape and abuse has very little studies done on it.
Yeah.
And my childhood, I felt compelled to write Redbird Phoenix. It was a catharsis to me, to relieve, to let all that trauma, put it on the page. But I hope my story so that others who are being abused could understand and look at my story and tell theirs.
And that's very important. You had mentioned to me at another time that 1 in 2 women has been abused physically or sexually, and 1 in 3 men. But
that was my findings when I did a study at Boise.
We don't have people talking about it very much, and everybody kind of dismisses it as, oh, that's not going to happen to me, and I don't know anybody, but chances are you do.
Yes, I'm not alone in this journey from Redbird Phoenix and putting it on the page. What was sad when I wrote first 2 books that I turned around and turned them into Redbird Phoenix. Fear was a living, breathing monster when I sat at my computer and first started writing. Domestic violence, sexual abuse control is kept by fear. And my parents made us fear them as a higher entity than God. The beatings, the abuse, we never knew when it was going to happen, what time of day, maybe several times a day. And they would take their anger. It was a constant. I can never remember hardly silence happening in my house. It was always rage and hateful words, beatings and accusations. And no child should have to grow up with that. And I thought by telling my story in Redbird Phoenix, I could open the door for other women and men and children to come forward and say, there is no shame in saying, I've been sexually abused.
Right.
And unfortunately, our religious teachings have taught and hampered us to make it a shame and that somehow the victim is at fault. I knew in writing my story, I was not at fault for what was being done to me. I had done nothing as a little child, 2 and 3, 5 years old until I was 18. I didn't ask to be raped and abused. I didn't ask my parents to hate me. I didn't ask for the starvation and watching my siblings be abused. I just didn't ask for it.
Right. No child does. And how unfair. So you had emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. And if I remember right, there was like denial of food and neglect as well.
My dad sold me when I was 12 years old to a man neighboring in the area, wanted his farm. And he sold me to him and told me I was going to marry him. And when the guy come to get me, I said, no, I ain't going. And I refused to go.
Wow.
And the guy demanded his money back, and which he got, and then I got trouble for the next 6 years. I basically eat my food out of the floor after cooking it, and
Gosh.
I was told I was nothing, that if I wanted to act like a dog, I could eat out of the floor, and that I could quit when I agreed to marry the guy, and I never did.
Wow, I can't even imagine. I can't imagine. And you're trying to go to school and be a normal kid.
I went to school barefooted. They refused to buy me any clothes or shoes. And thankfully, at Kingston, the cooks at the school seen me not eating, and my brother and sisters were, and they come and asked me. And of course, I broke down crying at a 12-year-old and said, I'm hungry and I'm not getting to eat. And the school cooks allowed me from the 8th grade through the 12th grade. They let me have food at school to eat. And that's what I'm asking the people in the public. Look, you can be the help that sets a child free of sexual abuse or domestic violence. Don't be afraid of being wrong if you go turn it in. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have turned it in, and maybe the child isn't being abused. I'm thankful that people care enough to go and tell DHS, hey, I think this child is being abused. That is what we need to be doing.
And so that's a great segue. So you ended up not marrying that gentleman that you're talking about, but you ended up marrying someone and he ended up abusing your children.
Yes. In The Hat Man, I wrote that story. I went through college, graduated from Arkansas Tech, and went on and at 24 met this dude. He was 23 years older than me. That should have been the first red flag, but I was so desperate. I had worked and been so abused. My health, I had ulcers so bad and so ill. I was looking for a refuge, someone to save me. And he said the right words, Tanya. He smelt right. He talked right. He shouted right in the church, and he helped me preach. Oh, was I ever fooled?
Oh, wow. So he was very religious as well, like you.
Yes. Yes.
And so he played the perfect front.
He
He
was the
knew.
perfect, I was the perfect patsy or the perfect idiot that he found.
Oh,
And I spent 20 years married to him. 6 weeks after I married, I woke up with him raping me in my sleep. And it continued from there. The domestic violence continued to get worse. After uh, I married him in 71, I had my first child in 75, second one in 77. And the abuse after the second child was born intensified. And I did not realize that there was a propensity in men and women to want children, and he wanted kids every 9 months. If I'd had children every 9 months, I'd have had a passel of them. There is a certifiable disease out there that they talk about. I don't know the name of it, but people like my mother, she wanted babies, but after she had them, she didn't want them. Well, he wanted babies, and after I had them and his other children, he bragged how he had abused his other 8 children to
God.
me. And so this is something that we need more studies done on. And
Right.
eventually, after 20 years of marriage, he tried to kill me and confessed that he had been harming our 3 children, and that he bragged how he had hurt his other kids. And he said, from now on, you're going to watch what I'm doing.
No.
And I said, no. And I had reported him to the federal VA in March of 1991. And they did nothing. In fact, they lied to the police, but I got away, and a pastor helped me. I was his associate pastor. He helped me, and the
Good.
Lord and I escaped with my husband trying to break the car window out to get to us.
Okay.
And that's all in the Hat Man. That happened in Idaho. But he was from Lamar, Arkansas, and we had lived in Dover. And finally, he was arrested. I had to go public on television to get him arrested.
Gosh,
And
that had to be scary.
it was
I
terrifying
mean, it's
because he came back several times trying to break into the home. But when he was arrested, they let him out on bond, and he went to California, but he came back twice trying to break into the home after dark.
my
And
goodness.
he was arrested in 91 September. He was convicted in October of 94.
So he did get convicted,
Yes, he
but
was
you said he
convicted.
didn't get very much time, though.
He was convicted, jail, 37 days in jail, 7.5 years probation. And I came home 20 years ago, and I came home, went to my churches I had pastored with him, and asked if anybody had been abused. Well, I had someone come to me from the public and told me that he had married this woman out of a Hector, and she had grandchildren, and I was told he had raped 2 of them. And he was a
No.
cousin to the late Sheriff Jay Winters. And I was told, why was I persecuting this old man? And I was flat told because he was a cousin to Winters, he wasn't going to get arrested. And he didn't.
So your ex-husband was from a similar place in Arkansas, and when you returned to Arkansas, you got some backlash from the community.
Yes.
My goodness. So on top of having to go through coming out, fighting the system, fighting your husband, trying to stay alive with your children, and then on top of that, the people that you're now back with, confiding in, they're not supportive.
I only had a few people who stepped forward and said he abused them. Since I came home 20 years ago, I have found, all in all, with my children and his children, I have found 36 victims
Wow.
that I know for sure that he abused.
Wow.
And he
And he
died,
only got 37 days.
yes, and was allowed to come back and continue abusing other children.
And that's what we see, and that's why you're fighting the way,
Yes.
and as hard as you are fighting. And you've written many books. I have both the ones you mentioned, the Redbird Phoenix, which is your original childhood, and then the Hat Man, which is the one about your husband, correct? Then you went back to school. You've made a career out of helping other people.
When
And
I went,
no, you really have.
yes, 35 years I've been doing this. And when I went back to Boise State University, I had to do a thesis to get my degrees. And I did a lot of women's studies, took every class they had in women's studies to get the degree I got. So I was telling my professor what happened, and I said, what can I write about? And I was telling him about the ministry and what I had seen, how churches are covering up and telling victims, you have to forgive. It's your fault. You're the one that tempted this man to rape you. And I thought, that isn't true. And they were being forced to tell the perpetrator, I forgive you. It's my fault.
I don't know that I have to always forgive and forget.
Romans 1:18-32, as the professor and I were discussing what I could write about, I told him about that scripture, and he said, you need to write what you know and what you have lived, and we called it forced forgiveness. So my thesis was done on forced forgiveness, and I looked at statistics of the time. That's the reason I know that in 1997, when I presented the thesis, that at that time it was 1 out of every 2 women and 1 out of every 3 men that was being abused, and the FBI at that time in Boise, Idaho, upheld my statistics and certified it for my thesis. So I wrote the book, and I've rewritten it, and I give it to any law firm, any prosecutor that wants to use it, because it stands up in court. It was an approved communication theory developed through Boise State University, stamped with their approval, so it makes it a legal communication theory, which holds up in court. And that is my way of saying my life hasn't been without anything, but it's my gift to the public to be able to leave that book to show that you're not. The Bible says a man who knows that sexual abuse and domestic violence is wrong and does it anyway, to him, it's eternal spiritual death. Not in this game to say that men who rape are going to be forgiven. It's soul murder. It kills the soul, especially of children. And many women never get over it, or men who have been raped. You live with the consequences, the body memories for the rest of your life.
The trauma that comes with that never goes away.
And in court, the defendant's attorneys rip the soul out of defendants. And there's no way for the prosecutor to keep that from happening. And that's why I'm in this battle to try to get a constitutional amendment to the state of Arkansas. If we get 38 states with domestic violence amendments, Congress then must make an amendment to the Constitution on domestic violence.
And you're talking about nationwide, as long as 38 states. And right now, I believe we're at 34, correct?
I think 2 have dropped out. I think we're down to 32 the last I looked.
Okay. You and I are working with a lot of different people
Yes.
We've been really blessed. We've got a lot of support. Representative Carolyn Brown has written a bill for us, and she is willing to take it to the legislature and fight for us. And I'm sure there are many others that I don't think that it had much opposition in the past. It's the legality, the technical words, the wording, and then the prosecutors are a little concerned about whether they might be prosecuted if something isn't done the way that the law is written. But that's something we're working on, trying to make sure that we have a victims' rights bill
Yes.
that can pass in 2027. That's the next opportunity that Arkansas has.
Well, I want to emphasize that my fighting is not about me. And it's about every child, every man and woman that's going to be abused in the next 2 years.
Yes.
And in the past, my abuse happened for 44 years. At age 44, I got out of it. My story's old. We need fresh voices stepping forward here in Arkansas saying, I want to tell my story, to share. And that's what, I've emphasized, and every time we've talked, this story can't just be about one person. It's got to be about the collective crowd of witnesses that we have out here in this state. In every county. There's 75 counties. We need 75 new, fresh faces telling their story that the legislature can hear, not just from me or those in the past that have testified, but from new faces that will get their attention and say, this is an epidemic. In fact, it's a pandemic that we need to stop, not only in our state, but for every victim in this country.
You're exactly right. And that's one of the big things that we're doing. You and I just joined a committee. It was just created actually by
Yes.
UAMS. We're really excited. So you and I are working with UAMS, and that I think is one of the things that in that committee we're going to try and work on. It's a domestic violence committee that is looking at the correlation between domestic violence and TBI, brain injuries. So domestic violence is one of the leading causes of brain injuries. And so that's why UAMS is very interested. And they've created this committee, and you and I both serve on this committee.
Yes.
And in February, we're hoping to come out with a huge education piece on domestic violence and the correlation between domestic violence and whether that's sexual assault or physical assault and TBI and how much that is affecting. It's not just, it is very much an emotional trauma, but then sometimes there are lingering physical effects that, someone has to go to the hospital for or rehab for, and it might be the rest of their life that they're struggling.
I had never really seriously looked at TBI until I started working with you, but I have a brain injury right here that in Washington, when I was teaching in that state, I'd went to a neurologist, and I was left blind in this eye. And he told me that he certified it, in fact, that it was from my mother would take a broom handle and knock me out to get a hold of me to abuse me time after time. And he said that had left me blind in that eye. And I have 5 blind spots in this eye. And see, there's so many avenues in abuse, like TBI, the mental abuse, and there's also the psychological abuse that we must have counseling for. And what is sad here in Arkansas, I have yet to find, I've been here 20 years and worked with women and children who have been abused free. I've yet to find a good clinic that understands sexual abuse and that actually can work with victims. So I've been encouraging UAMS to start a teaching program in their psych department so that we can graduate and have in the public trained therapists who understand sexual abuse and actually can work in the court system and testify in court what has happened to this child.
Right. And that's very important. Yeah.
And we need a center established in the state where every sexual abuse victim can be brought for an exam, and it's certified by a doctor who is certified in sexual abuse exams. So that when it goes to the court, he can say, or she can say, here's definite proof. Here's what I found that proves rape.
Right. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us about this today. I know we have a lot of work to do. We're going to do some amazing things. We have until 2027 to get that law just right, or that bill just right. And we're going to make that happen. And like you said, we need other people that are willing to tell their stories. We need other people to come forward.
And I want the public to know I come and speak to any church group, any organization. All I ask for is gas money. I'm not in this to make money. I'm in this to deliver a message. Victimization has to stop.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now, you had something you wanted to read.
Yes, I prepared a statement. This is for everyone out there listening. My goal in writing my story is to stop or expose the nightmare cover-up of domestic violence and rape. For 35 years, I have listened to victims relive their abuse. I want to weaponize survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse with the expectation that we ourselves, us, you and I, can change the law. The soul murder for children is unacceptable. I refuse to accept that a child can be sentenced to a life sentence because of rape and domestic violence. I want the audience to understand the desperation of every child. I want you to feel the fear, the pain, the destruction that crime with sexual abuse and domestic violence create. I've lived it for 44 years. Victims are made so by predators being allowed to walk freely among us in our churches, in stores, in businesses, in organizations like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. We have to have enforceable consequences to stop this murder of so many souls. Victims are powerless to defend themselves because our system is designed to protect the perpetrator. Victims of abuse are sentenced to a lifetime of reoccurring memories. Unbearable truth. Failing to wipe out domestic violence and sexual abuse is a generational curse and death to the soul of too many. Our legal system has a double standard, which favors the person raping and committing domestic violence. This is an unbearable truth. I give no apology for the truth and the ugly things going on behind doors that I'm fighting against. I want to scream at the injustice. I want to be heard. I want the injustice happening in our courtrooms, in our churches, our homes, our children's souls are being murdered, and domestic violence eating at the very foundation of truth that we as Americans espouse. The sacrifice of our most precious resource on the altar of blindness must stop. We must open the eyes of societal prejudices of ignoring domestic violence and the screams of rape victims. I want to nurture healing in the spaces of our hearts so we can discuss sexual abuse and find no shame in it. We can sit down in a group out on the public square and say, I was abused. Can you tell me what happened to you? And it'd be fine. I refuse to sanitize, sentimentalize, or accept domestic violence and sexual abuse as normal. It's a tragedy without an excuse. Sexual abuse and domestic violence almost destroyed me. God forbid if I don't stand and fight against it. I do not want another child to suffer and undergo the unforgivable pain that I lived with. My goal is to stop that suffering, and that's why I'm speaking out and why I've written my books, Tanya.
Thank you so much. That is so powerful. And I hope, for personal reasons, but also for everyone, that you are successful in your mission. I am so impressed by you and your strength to come forward, to tell your story, to write your books, and to help others. You've done so much.
Anyone that wants help or wants me to come and speak, get a hold of Tanya or myself, and we'll set up a time.
Yes, and we'll put the links to your website as
Yes.
well when we publish this. So thank you so much, Cae, for joining me.
Thank you, Tanya.
All right, everybody, we will see you next time. Come back for another survivor story about how they are thriving after the fire. Thank you, Cae.
Thank you, dear.
If you'd like to learn more about Keith Hancock or TBI resources, please click on the link below. Thriving After the Fire and SurvivorsCollab.org are brought to you by Reinventing Ourselves, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to promoting health, happiness, and hope.